What is wrong with dating a feminine man?
When you are with a man who is feminine, then I don't get the space to be feminine. Is he capable of speaking his truth? And a lot of men who received a lot of trauma from their hyper masculine fathers, they end up being hyper feminine. And these are the men who will present themselves as harmless because I don't hit you, I talk so softly, I adore you, I obsess over you.
Oh my god, the bar is so low. Women settle for the bare minimum is a really big problem. The society has conditioned women into believing that until they have a man, they're not complete. So they're just looking for that life support to be full humans. Are these things about feminine and masculine pushing us into gender roles, traditional gender roles that we were running away from?
Yes, because we're trying too hard to actually adapt to them. No, because it's not working out really well.
What is mother wound? What is a father wound?
Both mother and father wounds, they're all situated in these four bodies that we have: mental, emotional, spiritual, and physical. The mother or the father, they didn't assure the child enough that, hey, you don't need to prove it to me, that you don't need to earn it for me, that, hey, you're worthy of love.
Mother Zero had a mother wound and it was passed down to all the children, and then they developed a mother and a father wound, and then it was just, oh my god, it just spread like wildfire. Thank you for the time. Thank you for taking the time, and welcome to Burqa and Bikini. I'm excited that we're finally doing this after weeks
Yes.
of planning. I would just introduce you. You're Nimisha, and you're based in India, and you work on something that's so valuable. The whole world could be your client, or the whole world could be your community. Within your community is mother and father trauma. And today we're diving into this topic that's very rarely spoken about, even though people are starting to unpack this. It touches every aspect of like how we love and connect and see ourselves, and how our childhood memories and experiences, especially the relationship between our parents and our relationship with our parents, it can shape our views on love and sex and intimacy and dating. And Nimisha is a trauma-informed guide who works with individuals to heal childhood mother and father wounds. The reason I reached out to you and I felt like you could contribute to this space was I put in a lot of work into healing from some of these wounds. I can't say that I'm entirely healed, but I did quite a lot of work. And that also automatically changed the way I was picking partners. So there were two things I really worked on myself for. One was trauma from sexual abuse as a child, but I also really worked on my mother wound. And both of them kind of just came together in a really beautiful way. And it just changed how I was picking partners. And I mean, partners is a very secondary thing, a very advanced thing. It changed my friendships with people. It changed how I used to show up in public. It changed how I communicated. It just changed everything. So obviously it changed how I picked my partners and the kind of people I was picking and the partners I had and the energy I was attracting. But it also just changed everything. It changed my work life, my clarity. It just transformed everything. When I saw your work, it was interesting because you were talking a lot about grounding, and it seemed like you had made some lifestyle changes and you were staying more grounded. I loved watching that because I love moving around and traveling, but I also really, really like staying grounded. And everywhere I go, I'm like, okay, maybe I can stay here for 4 or 5 weeks. So I'm not in constant travel mode, and then I can be more grounded. So there's always a balance that I have to strike. It's not so easy. And that immediately pulled me in. Then I looked into more of your work, and then I was like, okay, this is like transformation. So
Oh, yes, I've had a really interesting journey from being a person who started traveling at such a young age, and specifically in a country where none of this was ever really cool at that point of time. I was, what, hardly 17. And
wow.
then I began to travel. I worked with different communities, and I would just pick up my bag and leave. And I crashed at people's places, lived with different kind of family units. That kind of made me understand how nuclear family units have such a big role in shaping our mindsets and how it was marketed to us. Some time ago, and being in spaces where I saw like different family units having intimacy and affection, and the way they spoke about love changed everything for me. It made me go beyond how I was raised. It made me go beyond. In fact, it got me closer at the same time distant, you know. Some parts of it reminded me of my roots that I never had enough time to just sit with. After my grandfather passed away, I kept thinking about, oh, but everything that he taught me about love came from him, the way he described my grandmother. I never met her, but the love stories I got to know about her, about how she would make her hair and how she would sing, how she would speak, how she would cook, every little detail about. In fact, his gestures and how his eyes would just suddenly go all, you know, he,
Yeah.
he would get really emotional every time he would talk about her. And that's the kind of introduction to love, poetry, romance I grew up with. So for me, that was it. You know, that's how lovers are supposed to be. That's how a man talks about his beloved. That's how, I knew deep down that, oh, my grandfather, I think, definitely wrote multiple books about like this particular woman that he fell in love with. And so that way, when I grew up with my parents and I saw their connection, I started to just understand that if this is how I'm supposed to understand love, I need to question every form of it. And then comes the whole picture of understanding trauma.
What part of India are you, for the audience, are you based in?
So,
Just so people can feel more situated in case somebody wants to come to you.
oh, yes.
And also, I would love for people to know a little bit more about you and how many years you're doing this.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So I was born in Panchkula, and this is again a part of Punjab, Haryana, and I'm a Punjabi. And growing up, I heard lots of stories again about Punjabi culture and the folk stories and folk music of Punjab. And then after that, my parents they moved to Jaipur. So I am staying in Jaipur right now, in Rajasthan, and I completed my schooling here, and then I began to travel because even though I was this person who was a nerd in everything, I wanted to still keep questioning and I wanted to unschool myself. So as soon as I finished my schooling, I decided to just pick up my bag and travel around the country. And that's when I began this whole journey of understanding emotional well-being. I started to take workshops, in fact, in different universities across the country. I would go work with 300 students at a time, in fact, and I would tell even all the teachers to maybe, give them some space so that they can open up. And most of these spaces were residential universities, so a lot of them were feeling lonely inside and they had a lot of questions about what they really wanted to do. And me being this person who was so young and relatable and who could provide a safe space for them to explore their emotions and not just like tap into them but explore that, okay, this is why I'm feeling, and this is, if I go back in time, the youngest version of me felt unsafe while I was trying to process this emotion, but because I was alone, I was not able to. So the fact that I understood this whole thread at that age kind of gave me a sense of responsibility that I have to explore this myself as well. And while traveling, I used to just go out and work with different people. I myself found a lot of mentors. In fact, I am very proud of it that even at this stage of my life, I have a lot of mentors myself, and I feel everybody should have mentors, therapists, guides. And it has helped me to the point where there are some times when I have a blind sight for something specific. They, become my mirror, and it helps to open up my, in fact, perspective towards so many things. So yes, started from unlearning patriarchy, holding spaces, workshops for women, meeting mothers across the country, specifically who wanted to heal their own mother trauma because they were so scared of um, being more connected to their own daughters and in general their kids. I think that was a big game changer, because when I started to work with mothers, I kind of came to realize that the root cause of everything is an unhappy mother. Is an unhappy mother. And even when we kind of come to the whole space of intimacy and love and relationships, it was all coming back to just one thing: unhappy mother. A mother who didn't know how to explore pleasure, a mother who didn't know how to even accept her own mother and everything that possibly she passed on to her, how to identify it, how to acknowledge it, release it.
Yeah. What is mother trauma? Or, sorry, what is mother wound? What
Yes.
is a father wound?
Thank you for asking me that. And that takes me back to the four spaces that I was talking about: mental, emotional, spiritual, and physical. Both mother and father wounds, they're all situated in these four bodies that we have, right? Mental, how they stay in our thoughts; emotional, how they stick around as emotions, how we felt with this particular person we called our father, how we felt with this particular person we literally trusted as our mother. Because when we come out of a mother's womb, even before we come out of a mother's womb, we know that there are these two people, and these are the two people we have to trust. When we come out from this beautiful, very well equipped space called womb, where we have the perfect temperature, perfect light, food is being given to us, everything is taken care of, we feel like the king of the world. And then we come out and our nervous system needs regulation. We need two reliable people to feel sane, to feel safe, because our senses are just so overloaded. Oh my God, so many colors. It's so bright, so many sounds. Oh, who is speaking to me? Oh, that's my mother. I can sense that this is a familiar voice. It gives me peace. It gives me some sense of connection. That's my mother. Then there's the father, the protection. So, different ways a child seeks regulation from the nervous system of the parents, and it's biological. It's not something that I made up or something. It's pure biological. Like, even when a mother is not in the physical space of a baby, you'll notice that she actually starts to lactate the moment the baby is crying in some another part of the room. So the body of a woman knows how to nourish, nurture, like her own child. And that's how the bodies have been designed. But when these bodies are also disassociated and disconnected with their own selves and their own feelings and emotions, and they have a lot of unprocessed information in the body, that comes then again in the form of epigenetics. It is passed on from one person to another. So it's similarly, let's say if the father had a lot of anger towards his own father, because his father was controlling, let's say, he didn't allow him to have his own identity. So growing up, the father will not know how to soften up around his own child, or will try to have ego battle with the child. And what will happen as a result of it? The child will not feel safe to be around his own father, right? And similarly with the mother as well. Like when the mother grows up in environments where there is, let's say, a lot of shame, guilt, and fear, maybe a lot of oppression, identity crisis, in fact, that she didn't know anything else but to be a mother. That she
Yeah.
didn't know anything else but to be needed. So what do I do if I'm not needed? So a lot of, again, crisis of understanding her own needs and communicating them, all of it gets passed on, let's say, to the daughter, because now the daughter
Yeah.
is growing up watching her mother, incapable of knowing and identifying
Yeah.
who she is without
Yeah.
being a mother.
You know, one thing that I've really missed in my upbringing is, and it's it's really strange because we don't see this in our culture, especially in South Asian families or Muslim families, especially because I'm from Pakistan.
Mm.
Everything is so shrouded. One thing that I've really missed in this culture is physical affection between parents.
Yeah.
And I feel like this is the most natural part of being alive, physical affection towards your partner. So it's really bizarre to me that people live like 30, 40, 50 years together, have a family, but they can't kiss in front of their children.
Yeah.
And not only they cannot not kiss, it's actually looked down.
Yeah.
if you do so, why are we like this? Because it's it just always baffles me, like, you know, in a lot of ways, Desi families and South Asian culture is more accepting towards emotion. In a lot of ways, in a lot of strange ways, they are more expressive. Like, we've seen that in the movies, we've seen that in Bollywood, we've seen that when women are married off and parents are really crying, at the end of the event. So
Yeah.
in a lot of ways, emotions are not hidden.
Mm.
But in a lot of other ways, they are hidden, and there's so much of a juxtaposition
Mm.
that I'm like, I cannot understand a culture that is actually okay with parents crying, giving their daughter away.
Mm.
Have never actually, some of them have actually never told their daughter in their lifetimes that they love her. This is another thing, right? My partner and I talk about it. It's interesting because he was born and raised in Europe and he's from here.
Mm.
And we talk about it very often. Our parents never told us that they loved us. Of course, they loved us, but they never said that we love you. But
Yeah.
that's also like a case specific family thing, because I do know a lot of Desi parents who freely tell their children that we love you, or especially moms tell their daughters, or whatever. Moms tell their sons. So while that also exists,
Mm.
the absence of parents being physically affectionate in Desi culture, it's so bizarre to me. What's going on here? Why are we like this?
I think it's has got a lot to do with this whole pressure of being high moral and traditional. The concept of high morality is so, sometimes it consumes you. It takes away so much of freedom to express from you. And then on the other hand, you act so dramatic and dysregulated while expressing some emotions that everybody around you gets disturbed by it. Like how you said, sometimes they react in such a hyper manner, like, that this is such an immature way of expressing something, right? Like how if you say something to your mother, she'd be like, but is this how I raised you? This is how I,
Yeah,
like the
a lot
whole.
of gaslighting, a lot of reverse psychology, yeah, all the time.
So, it's so, again, I get it, it's so contradicting, but it all comes down to the traditional way they look at a woman, how she should express, and the traditional way of how the man should express. And then they have this whole traditional picture of a couple, that this is how a well-behaved couple should behave. This is how they should talk. This is how they should, do whatever. Because I think we both know, now, I guess it is a little less, how do I say, prominent, but even in previous times, they would in fact make sure that the lady is virgin, right, on the night of the marriage. And then they would check if, that she was a virgin the next day, and it should be celebrated, that they have to show a bed sheet and this and that. I think in some places they still do it. Yeah. In, again, conservative, traditional spaces, anything can become something to be proud of. And that's why I think a lot of people resist in showing affection, because they think that this level of control has got a lot to do with the pride of their family and their self-esteem, and how they treat their wife in the public perspective. But in this whole rush, I think they never really receive education from their own parents about, if you're not showing it publicly, are you even showing it behind the doors? Okay. And even if you're showing it behind the doors, like after a point, then what's this whole secrecy about being able to love another person? I think it kind of brings down to, again, this whole masculinity, that if you love a woman, you're a simp. Or if you held her hand, you're holding her hand, such a simp. You're doing something for her which shows so much of public, display of love towards her, such a simp. So I guess it's the whole, again, perspective that was imposed on men separately and women separately, that, oh, you can't
Yeah,
communicate your husband that you want to be touched like that. You can't communicate these things, that, hey, can we not have sex tonight? They didn't even know that they can say no to their husband, that, hey, I don't want to
yeah.
have sex tonight. You get
You
it?
know, you know, you said something that really stuck with me, is that the root cause of everything is the mother trauma or the mother wound. And I feel like this is so cyclical,
Mm.
because somebody has, like, mother zero had a mother wound, and it was passed down to all the children, and then they developed a mother and a father wound, and then it just spread like, oh my god, it just spread like wildfire. So that's how I picture it.
Yeah.
But it's really interesting that you said that, because the way I feel that the way I think a mother wound is that it's just emotional pain or unmet needs or trauma that a woman carries or a person carries due to their relationship with their mother. So it could also be intergenerational trauma. But what kind of partners are people, both men and women, likely to attract with a mother wound? Do we have some patterns, or people
There
just
are
surprise
patterns.
you in how it
Yeah,
shows
they
up?
are. Yes, yes, patterns. So many of them, in fact. All of this leads to patterns because our bodies are designed to cope and survive, right? And the body will do anything to find familiarity and safety, a sense of assurance that if this is how I was raised, if my mother used to beat me in this particular way, this was her love language. So growing up, this is normalized. So anything that is sold to a child as the form of love, this is the love language because you're receiving it from your caretakers, right? So it must be love. So the moment the child normalizes that growing up, the child only constantly looks for that familiarity. So if the mother or the father didn't assure the child enough that, hey, you're worthy of love, that hey, you don't need to prove it to me, that you don't need to earn it for me, or that, oh, I really love your hair, I love your eyes, I love the way you dress. The girl or the daughter will grow up as a woman with high self-worth, right? Because my mother really showed and expressed that I'm so worthy of love, I'm worthy of appreciation, that I need to not constantly appreciate someone back. Somebody's giving me a compliment that, hey, I really like your dress, and other person is like, yeah, I like yours too. No, 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 it's okay to just say thank you. It's okay to
Yeah.
receive it, so like I think these really minor things that makes a woman believe in herself a little more, feel comfortable in her skin, to be able to show herself to the world that this is who I am,
Yeah. And what kind of patterns show up in a relationship if a woman has a mother wound? Something really alarming that we all do but we don't realize, or a lot of us do but we don't realize we're doing it.
There can be two spectrums of it. One can be really suppressed need, side, not knowing how to communicate and not knowing your worth at all, in fact. Because when you see your mother not being treated right by your own father, you feel that this is how a woman is supposed to be treated. So, like, let's say if the father, cooks with the mother, if a child is raised in a family where you see that, oh, my father is always in the kitchen with my mother, he's helping her out. And let's say every time she gets ready, he compliments her, or like he really brings her flowers and all these gestures, just like making tea for her and all these things. And let's say the opposite of it. Let's say the father is completely patriarchal, doesn't make his wife feel seen, doesn't appreciate her. Now, if a daughter is raised in such an environment, subconsciously she is observing that this is how a woman is treated, and everything else which is an additional to it will be a bonus. So if I end up finding a guy who is, let's say, appreciating me, wow, he's the nicest guy on the planet. you know how women start to settle down for bare minimum is actually a direct reflection of how they saw their mother. That's why I think this is the biggest disease we say right now in women. They settle down for bare minimum because we have such low expectations after a point. He talks well. Okay. He has some certain height. Okay. And he once in a while appreciates it. And he listens to
This is
me.
so interesting because I always say this, that women settle for the bare minimum is a really big problem, because, and my analogy for that and my theory is that the society has conditioned women into believing that until they have a man, they're
Mm,
not complete. So they're just looking for that life support to be full humans.
yeah.
But it's so interesting you say that the conditioning is also passed down
Yeah.
by other people in society who also have a mother wound. This is so crazy.
Yeah. You said something that I wanted to explain because so I designed a whole course around it. It's called Reclaim Your Power. Okay. And this is something that I designed 5 years ago. When I began to understand that this is not so simple, that, oh, when one mother, got traumatized and it got passed on, it's not that simple. It is actually very multidimensional. And that's why I began to read more history and the origin of patriarchy and the origin of matriarchy, and how matriarchy had its own flaws and benefits. And then patriarchy walked in and said that, no, 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 we have to change this to now patriarchy, because patriarchy needed more money. Churches wanted to make more money, you see. And matriarchal societies were not so profitable technologically. That was the only flaw, by the way. There was nothing as such more flaw. Because matriarchal societies were very community based, very nourishing, very, I just said, cyclic, They really loved the regeneration, death. They accepted the lunar cycle, they accepted the moon calendar. They loved mothers. Matriarchal societies honored mothers. They loved taking care of the collective
Which
together.
is what a lot of women led spaces look like these days, to be completely honest.
Because we are awakening, we are healing, we are realizing that all of us are living in a society which is designed conveniently for men, and it has disconnected us from our own wombs, our own bodies, and our intuition, specifically our creativity. It has taken our power away and our voice away so much so that for a specific period of time we were just fighting for the basic rights. Now we are slowly coming to the point, let's celebrate these basic rights. Let's celebrate you and I. Let's celebrate a space where we can sit and talk and dance, and celebrate that we have a job, celebrate that we can buy a property on our name, celebrate that we can travel, and again, like, just enjoy this privilege that is, again, sourced to us in a specific way. So I think right now it's a very collective shift. The fact that women, irrespective of what countries they come from, what traditions and lineages they come from, they have this whole emotion that I want to let this baggage go that doesn't belong to me. That I want to rewrite the history. I want to reconnect with my ancestors. I want to know what it feels like to be a happy woman. A woman who knows herself, a woman who knows her worth, a woman, even though she was not raised by a present healthy father, but wants to now be surrounded by healthy masculine figures, which is a big challenge, I know. It is a big challenge, because something that you have never experienced, and then starting your journey from the scratch of inviting it into your life, takes so much of strength and courage and awareness, to say no, that this is not, I'm something going to accept, that no, and I will not let you decide what I do with my money, you know. So I guess that's where, again, the whole act of letting go of the mother and father wounds together as a collective is happening. It's showing up. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you said that the root cause of everything is the mother wound, but I actually feel like, and I agree with you there,
Mm.
because we're the source, women are the creators, so I understand that. I also feel at the same time, though, that it's so important to also let go of the father wound, because it works in cohesion. It doesn't work in isolation. So if I look at my life, I had a mother wound, a very, very, very intense mother wound. But parts of that mother wound healed a lot faster because I did not have a father wound, if that makes sense. You know? And parts of my personality did not have those cracks that people would normally do if they have a mother wound, because I did not have a father wound. Like, I'm so grateful, and a lot of people ask me, like, how did you have the awareness? And I'm like, I'm not sure. You really don't know how you have the awareness when something's second nature to you, because you think it's just so readily, abundantly available in the universe. Like, for example, body image issues. Never struggled with that. I'm so grateful. Even though I come from a society, and we both come from society where it's so easy to be overweight or underweight. I mean, you don't have to be underweight or overweight to be called overweight and underweight. And I did not have a lot of these hiccups. Like, so it's also something that I learned in my therapy is that a lot of people, what they go through, they either become really repulsive to that behavior or they double down. So I used to see this. My therapist told me once that you're so different from your sister because there were a lot of things she saw and she doubled down. And you were like, I'm not gonna, you were like the avoidant attachment. I'm not gonna do that. And it has something to do with also the fact that you're younger, you've seen an older sibling. We were both raised in the same family. We just made vastly different decisions about our love life. And sometimes it's so crazy because we literally had the same upbringing, but we attracted different types of men. And in fact, I was like, I don't need a man. It's so crazy because if you say something like that, people think, oh, maybe she has a huge father wound, like, daddy issues. But it's so crazy because I never had any daddy issues. Like, I have a lot of disagreements with my father, especially as I'm growing older, but I have no traumas from him. I'm sure I do, like, have subconscious triggers and stuff. But I don't feel like there are traumas that I need to sit down and it's just he had a really broken life in a lot of ways, but he also had a very healed masculinity in a lot of ways. But also, like, that healed masculinity had parts which did not know how to express themselves in a healthy way. And now I see that and I can, like, put it together. But it's like we were so different. So a lot of people are growing up with these wounds, right? And some people are making the right choices. Something is working out for them. And a lot of them haven't put in that work. So what are people doing right despite the wounds? Like, how can you navigate that? Because where do you start and where do you learn? Because we cannot go to every single person and be like, oh, by the way, you have a wound from your father and now first you should heal that and then we can talk about dating.
Yeah.
It's just you. It's like being a doctor. If you're a doctor, not everybody can be your patient. So how do you, like, what is working out for people, for men and women, especially women who are born and raised with all these wounds, but they're somehow making it work?
Yeah.
Is it a coincidence or is it just
Well, nothing is ever a coincidence. I think that's where the whole concept of spiritual records of people walks in. That every human being has a different spiritual journey. Their spiritual evolution is different. As I said when I talked about the bodies, right? The mental, emotional, spiritual, and physical. So this is where spiritual identity comes in. Spiritual identity is not limited to, oh, this is who I am, Nimisha. I was raised by these two parents, and this, that, and that. Spiritual journey of a human being, of a soul, is very vast. Like like a lot of things now we see kids, they know it at the age of 4 that we didn't know when even we're, let's say, 20. So I feel that every human soul has a lot of spiritual past, and we all come with different informations. Some of them are very activated, and some of them get activated with time, when we all go through different phases of life and our evolution like literally gets triggered, and we start to act from certain spaces that, okay, in this particular timeline, I know I have to work on my money wound. It just happens all of a sudden. It's a inner calling, that we say that there's a voice that says, no, I have to figure my money situation, otherwise, it's going to be a problem. Or suddenly you start to look at your mother from a different perspective. You start to look at her as a woman. Or you meet somebody all of a sudden who starts to remind you of all the things that you need to work on. That's why we always say that relationships are literally like ayahuasca ceremonies, that they bring out the worst and best in you. And when you were talking about like you not having father wound, I so relate. I so relate, because I was raised by a father who was the most emotionally intelligent man I've ever met in my life. So I grew up with these high expectations of like men being emotionally intelligent. And that's this pattern that I actually caught is quite recent. When I say recent, I noticed myself that I am one of those people who project their own potential on other people. You know how some people are like to project their insecurities and fears and whatnot? I, on the other hand, I project the potential, that I'll see the best in everyone. I'll see, you know. And that high morality comes from my father. And I had to neutralize that, by the way, with my therapist, because I was like, nah, this is not working for me in this particular timeline, because not every person I'm meeting is definitely resonating with the energy and intelligence of my father. So it was the opposite for me, similarly, you know. So how I feel right now is it's correct that every human being, I feel, in different parts of their life starts to utilize the wisdom of their trauma as well. I don't know if you saw the documentary by Gabor Mate, Wisdom of Trauma. You should definitely check it
I
out.
love Gabor Mata, yeah.
I
I
love
love
him.
his work.
Exactly. So the DNA itself, I believe, has so much of wisdom that I know if I'm repelling something, it has some answer that can liberate me. Every time I meet someone and I know that there is a part of me, if I can just sit back and ask myself, the awareness of it, that, okay, there is something that is happening, I need to work on. I think that it is called responsibility.
Yeah.
I think it's called responsibility, accountability, that every human being has to just make like, okay, this is my second nature, you know? Something happened, I have to take responsibility of it and not go this whole victim downward spiral of like, like life is bad with me, like I'm supposed to live this miserable life. No, no, no. Okay, what exactly life is trying to teach me right now? And let's say if I'm meeting some, let's say, men in my life constantly who are not treating me right, then I have to sit back and, ask myself that in what ways am I completely dependent or codependent or attaching my happiness and self-worth to these particular men. Like you said, that after a point you're like, I don't need men. And yes, some people would just think that, oh, you have a father wound. But after a point, a woman who has learned to decenter or not romanticize relationships will actually be the most liberated ones. And that gives you a set of, how do I say, you know now what it feels like to be in a good relationship with yourself.
Yeah, I
You,
mean, the trauma can also kind of work for you. It's a double edged sword.
it is.
So it kind of gave me healthy self esteem. I'm not
Yeah.
going to settle for less. On the other hand, I see a lot of women who would double down and just find anybody to be with. And that the fact that, okay, I need someone, or if I am with someone, this person has to be a certain way and standards have to be high in life. Why should I have low standards? All of that were good things that I got from my father. But because I blocked it out so much that when I actually met someone who I really, really loved, I had to learn how to receive now because I have a big wall in front of me for like a decade or longer. And my belief is also because of my childhood abuse that men are a certain way. And I have this hypothetical impression or this hypothetical wish or something in this cloud. Okay, cool. But a good partner is supposed to be like this, but my actual conscious, like my subconscious mind is like, okay, cool. You think that a man is supposed to be like this, but you actually hate men and you feel like you don't need them. So gulf of a difference between what's in the cloud, what's on the ground, you know? And then you have to learn to receive. And everything is so complex. And it's difficult for really, really independent women to actually receive. And I feel like we're changing that really fast because I was on a podcast recently with somebody, and she does a lot of shadow work and embodiment in the US, and she's also Indian American, like Indian roots. And maybe you guys should look maybe you should look her up. Maybe you guys have like a lot in common. I would send you details, and it was so amazing to talk to her because we were talking about the fact that, we had this era where women were breaking all the barriers and going all out for freedom, and we're not gonna put up with this. And now when we look back, we call this the woke culture. But the truth is, we needed this kind of an era where we would develop this hustle culture and women have freedom and freedom of choice and all of that. But a lot of women who've done that work now are like, we don't want to be hyper masculine. What are we doing? And I've seen that shift so much in my life. I still want to do all the things I wanted to do. I just don't want to keep talking about how that's the only thing I want, because there is more that you want. And I feel like, I put it in a really casual way that for a long time women were like, I can buy my own dinner, I don't need men to pay for me on dates. And now a lot of us are like, yeah, if you want to take me on a date, you better pay for me. And it's interesting because I'm like, I don't care who pays for me, I'm still a free person. You think you can buy me with dinner? But that shift like completely changed. And I feel like I mean, a lot has happened in the last few years for women to come to this point. Why do you think this is happening, and what's really happening? Are we
Yeah.
all like healing from our mother wound at the same time?
I think what you just mentioned, the art of receiving, is the game changer. And it is the most difficult one as well. I'll tell you why. Because a lot of women, they feel that they can't receive because they have to pay back.
I
That in some way,
know. It's
you
gonna
know,
be rubbed in my face at some
exactly.
point.
Because they saw that while growing up, maybe in their parents, or it happened with them multiple times that somebody gave them something and then they had to, kind of, they were made to feel bad about receiving. Yeah, the act of receiving. They were made to feel weak about it, or they were manipulated into receiving, and then they felt that they owe this person something now. So overall their power was taken away, their voice or their control was taken away, so now they fear receiving because they feel that it will be a debt that they'll have to pay. I think that's one big thing that I noticed. And another one is just the discomfort with receiving, and that receiving will somewhat make me feel seen, that receiving will somewhat make me let down this whole, as you said, masculine independent guard down, that I'll have to come across as a person who is needy, and I don't want to look needy. So I think it's just it's so beautiful how human we are, like how we try to just protect ourselves
Yeah.
in so many ways. But a woman's health, I believe, is all about receiving pleasure, receiving money, receiving appreciation, and receiving a space to be creative. It's all about receiving. But for the longest time, in the last whatever years, when patriarchy came in, patriarchy manipulated a woman into believing that her role is just to be a giver, that the more you give, the high moral woman you are. The more you sacrifice, the greater the woman you are. So she thought that, I can't be selfish. No, 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 no. Being selfish is something I cannot be judged for. Like, no, I can't
Yeah.
afford to be selfish.
This is such a truth bomb that you say that, because for a long time, women have been conditioned into being givers.
Yeah,
Even though it's the masculine energy which is more provider and giver.
yeah.
So this is
Hmm.
so confusing.
That's why it's a clash, and both
It's
of them are.
such a clash
Yeah.
because I don't know, like all the women before us who were just giving, 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 was that wrong?
Hmm.
Because a lot of them also built beautiful families. Like, not every family is dysfunctional, and not every, like, look at where humanity is, look at where the evolution is. And I
Yeah.
feel like humanity is where it is, even capitalism is where it is, because women have held space for that.
Yeah.
Women have held space for their partners for a long time to, to be who they want, I feel.
People
And
mothering their partners, right? Like
so
women
it's
have this.
such a clash. And what is this clash?
How I've been discussing it with my community, and the eye-opening one was that when I again read more into it, I realized that a woman is supposed to be motherly only to her children and nobody else. But because it's so deep rooted in us to be the supportive, motherly, sacrificing, giver, wife material, you know how they say that the more all of this you are, the higher your value as a wife becomes. And again, all manipulation. You lose yourself in the whole process, and once you lose yourself, everybody can shake up your reality, right? So it's so important for a woman to stay in touch with this hygiene, I would say. that the moment she starts to even manifest or attract somebody who wants her to be the mother, it's a grown ass man, like, a grown ass man expecting the lady to be, and basically be the giver and be the mother. In that very moment, she should know that, okay, no, this is not the right person for me. That I want to give love, I want to give affection, but not as a mother, as a beloved, as a partner, as a companion, as a friend, as a wife, but there is a difference in loving someone as a mother and loving someone as a partner. And you have to understand that the whole mother nature should definitely show up with the children only. Because if you start treating your partner as a child constantly, and you start to mother them, you're also taking space away from them to grow and show up for you in a lot of ways. And not just that, in fact, you're taking space away from their own selves to trust their own, actions,
Yeah.
to believe in themselves more, to be more decisive, in fact, So I believe it has to be a lot of responsibility for women and men both to recognize that if a man starts to feel that I'm expecting her to replace my mother, that she should love me the way my mother, loves me, it's a problem. It's a problem, and you have to work on it. You have to seek support. You have to release these patterns. And similarly with a woman as well, if she's constantly attracting men around who need her to show up as a mother, support him financially, support him like cooking for him all the time, giving him all the nurturing care and whatnot, and also taking care of the family and the house and kids and everything together, she will deplete herself. And after a while she will deplete to the extent where it will hamper her mental health and physical, of course, because it
Right.
you know
Yeah.
goes up.
You
Yeah.
said that you just said something that there are men who want women to show up in a lot of ways, which also includes financial support and all of that. There is this whole growing debate on the internet about feminine men
Mm.
and how they are not harmless. And I know someone who went through something very, very personal and was with a man like that. And we had a really open conversation. And she's this wonderful human being who's into a lot of Reiki and healing. And I was like, what happened there? And how did you end up in this situation? And then she told me, and obviously there must be some wounds that came up. And she was like, it was in this timeline exactly because I think the universe doesn't want that I spend the rest of my life like that. But what is wrong with
Yeah.
dating a feminine man? Because we've learned so much about sexuality is on a spectrum. You're somewhere on the spectrum. And you can be, some women are more masculine than others, some women are more feminine than others, some men are more masculine than others, and some men are more feminine than others. So if it seems like this organic spectrum, then you can be where you are and where you wish and where you desire. So what is really wrong with dating a feminine man, and when does it work and when does it not work?
You know, I I'm very happy that with time men are realizing that they can express more, right? That they can show their emotions more, that there are spaces now where they can also heal, da 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 da. But at the same time, the whole space where when we say hyper spiritual men or hyper feminine men, um, I'm not a huge fan of that particular, I would say, category, because when you are with a person, when you are with a man who is feminine, then I don't get the space to be feminine. You get it? That it's like if you are the princess, I can't be the princess. You know how we say it? So it's a lot of about expression, but at the same time, how a man takes care of himself, how active he is when it comes to his physical and mental well-being. Is he working out? Is he decisive? Is he capable of, teaching the kids survival skills? Is he capable of protecting his wife? And let's say if she falls sick suddenly, is he also going to panic and fall apart, or is he going to take the lead, in fact, and take care of her and do what is required in the moment? Is he capable of being that assertive? Is he capable of speaking his truth anytime another friend of his is being, let's say, patriarchal? you know so I believe it's a lot to do with how men see each other as well. And a lot of men who received a lot of trauma from their hyper masculine fathers, they end up being hyper feminine because they repel masculinity in itself. I don't want to be hyper masculine like my father, so I will choose hyper femininity. Or I will go on this long journey of going into tantra and spirituality and crystals and reiki and whatnot, but that will be spiritual bypassing only. They are not working on themselves. It's a coping mechanism because it makes them feel better about themselves and the paths they're choosing. But their shadows are still active. Their pain has not left. They still get triggered every time they think of their father, and they still avoid fatherhood, an active conscious fatherhood. And these are the men who cheat, and these are the men who will present themselves as harmless because I don't hit you, I talk so softly, I adore you,
Oh
I
my god,
obsess
the
over
bar
you.
is so low. I love
Yeah.
the way you've put it. It's so low.
So women think, oh yeah, he's
Because I don't
harmless.
speak loudly,
Yeah.
because I don't hit you, like,
And we think,
oh my
wow, he's a
god.
perfect guy, he's so safe. the,
But
the
don't,
idea is to not find a safe man. The idea is to find a man. You get it? What we think is that because I'm surviving, I need to find somebody who's safe for me. But isn't safety should be like a bare minimum again thing that you're finding somebody if your foundation of finding somebody is safe, somebody who talks to me softly with respect. I mean, don't you think that should be the foundation either way?
yeah, I have seen in my experience that men whose masculinity is healed, I mean, who have really done the work, they are the most soft-spoken men I've ever met in my life.
Exactly.
And in an argument, they speak even more softly. And that's a tacit sign that you can hear me just fine, and I can
Yeah.
hear you just fine
Yeah, they
if
don't
we
get triggered.
speak.
Yeah.
Yeah. And this is so interesting because, but I'm also thinking, like, very frequently when we talk about these things, are these things about feminine and masculine pushing us into gender roles, traditional gender roles that we were running away from for a long time?
Yes and no, both. Yes, because we're trying too hard to actually adapt to them. No, because it's not working out really well. A lot of us are failing at it. For example, I think I still remember some years of my life, I was very hyper masculine because I was raised by a hyper masculine mother who was the boss of the house, right? So for me, I knew that the power dynamics works as such. If I'm hyper masculine, then I will have the power. Any woman who acts masculine will have the power. She gets things done. She has the say what happens in the house. So I thought this is how I'm supposed to be. If I have to get things done, then I need to be masculine. And after a while, it obviously took a toll on my own understanding of feminine energy because then I started to feel that then feminine energy is weak, that I'm not supposed to be feminine because it will not help me at all. But now that I've healed both aspects of it, I know that being more feminine has gotten more work done than being masculine. You know that that being myself and connected with my intuition, my softness, my expression, but at the same time my fierceness, my gut feeling, and my protective nature as a woman makes me a good leader in general. Makes me a good person who is capable of being with a beautiful community that I can nourish, protect, and just be there. I can be very resourceful to each and every space or add value to wherever I go. Now, the problem comes when we start to become one thing extra only to feel that the other party will actually bring me down. If I'm being more masculine, then being feminine will be a drawback for me. Now, that's something we need to heal. And the reason why I said that all of this whole masculine, feminine thing is not working really well for our present generation, to be honest, is because as women right now, for example, me, I have adapted now to really healthier ways of being some, like, how do I say, masculine in some things as well. Healthier ways of adapting to being assertive, healthier ways of looking at things where I know where I need to take a stand or be more, decisive. Now, should I call it being masculine, or should I just call it me being in my power, right? So that's the confusion that happens, that we have started to literally associate being powerful or being assertive with masculinity all the time, as if a woman cannot be that without being masculine. I think she can be. I think women are just way more, I would say, powerful, and they should start accepting that their feminine nature is way more powerful than, in fact, them adapting to masculine ways of living and masculine ways of looking at things. Yes, there are ways when we need to be a bit more logical and linear, for sure. I think that, so I highly recommend that. I feel that for the longest part of time, the biggest weakness, in fact, that became for a woman in general is when she was convinced that her emotions are her biggest enemy, and that she doesn't know how to regulate them, and that this is why her power was taken away in history as well. That matriarchy fell apart because men came in and said that, oh, you're very emotional beings, you shape yourself based on the moon, so we can't trust you, so we have to take in charge now, you take a back seat. So we also thought, yeah, maybe they're right, because we're so emotional, maybe we should let them take the lead. So they started changing things around, and after a while, of course, before we even knew it, we had no power at all. So right now as well, we have to understand that the more we are aligned with our creativity, our sense of pleasure, our community, women, having safe women around is the biggest healing aspect of life for any like, I would say, human being as well, to be honest. So yeah, I would say that a man trying to be hyper feminine or hyper masculine, I think it all brings down to a man really stepping into his truth and realizing that where his identity of being feminine or masculine coming from, and is it really his, or is it just being passed on from his coping mechanisms from his father or his mother. Similarly with our daughter as well, I feel. So yeah, I
This
hope
is,
you.
yeah, this is so interesting. And something that you said that really stuck with me was the fact that women are too emotional. And this is something you hear a lot in corporates, in the world, in work life. Oh, you're too emotional. And you should regulate how you say that. You should watch your tone, stuff like that. And I find this to be the biggest scam in the world, because I know so many men who show and express their emotions at workplace as they please. They express anger, they express frustration, they abuse power, they raise their voice, all of which are emotions. All of which are emotions, and they're not healthy, and we don't need to put up with those at workplace. But the minute a woman does that, or says something angrily, she's hormonal, or she is on her period, she cannot think straight, she's just too emotional, she's just a mess, and she's aggressive, and a man is immediately assertive. So I feel like women being told to keep their emotions at bay is just the biggest scam. It was the biggest scam, because it's not like men don't show emotions. I mean, becoming violent from one minute to the next is also an expression of rage, which is an emotion. So much of male behavior is rooted in intense emotions, and a lot of men have no clue how to not be that horrible person that they become when their emotions take over. So this attachment of emotions with a woman, it's just a scam. It was just made by capitalists to push
Yeah.
the capitalist agenda. That's how I
Mhm.
feel.
Yeah, absolutely, yes, because their expression is acceptable, but a woman's expression is not. It's overreaction. It's dramatic.
Yeah.
So It all boils down to not making her feel sane,
Yeah.
not really
Her
making her feel.
questioning herself.
Yeah. And that becomes gaslighting, of course, because after a point, the woman starts to feel like, I mean, being a woman, by the way, right now, who's also healing from a lot of abuse, you know. So, and when we mention about being emotion, my biggest lesson recently um, has been that in a lot of legal formalities, the woman has to somehow become completely emotionless. And when I say emotionless, suppose like I'm going through a divorce, right? And after meeting back to back lawyers, what I figured out that the biggest mistakes I did in the whole marriage or in even after I filed for the divorce and everything were all emotional decisions. And it was all a lot of emotional manipulation that obviously turned out to be my biggest weakness, that okay, this is how my reality was manipulated, you know. So the moment you are around predators and the people that, for example, a lot of time women end up not taking alimony because they feel that they are emotionally manipulated into not taking it, right? And then they want to feel again that, oh, so if I'm supposed to be a good woman, I'm not supposed to take it. It's a lot of societal way of conditioning a woman into believing that her time and her energy was actually not worth nothing. I mean, a lot of
Yeah.
ways she's conditioned to believe that whatever you did, what you're supposed to do as a wife.
Yeah. I mean, if you're not working, might as well clean.
Exactly. So in such scenarios, I always motivate women, in fact, and I push them into being more linear and logical. And that can help them take decisions from, and I wouldn't say less emotional perspective, but more regulated, more aware perspectives. Because that's why in the present timeline at the moment, a lot of women are being again targeted by a lot of predators, you know, because they are being raised in again absent father families, so they're easy to be, you can easily target a woman who's isolated from her family. You can manipulate her. You can come across as harmless. You can convince her that you love her. Love bombing is so common, you know. It's finally considered as, you know, part of emotional abuse. So women who are isolated from their family units, they become again, you know, victims of emotional abuse a lot because they don't know who to go back to or who to talk to. They're so
Yeah.
isolated, you
And
know.
people take advantage of that.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. You know, before we close, I have a really burning question. We talk a lot about how women are born, a lot of
Mm.
women are born with traumas in the body,
Yeah.
just inherent traumas in the body. You
Mm.
don't always have to go through some kind of abuse with the body to carry abuse and carry trauma.
Yeah.
But we also associate this narrative with women.
Mm.
I mean, if that's a mother wound that she
Mm.
gave birth, it should apply to men as well. I feel like it does apply to men, but we don't
It
really
does.
speak much of it.
It
So
does apply.
I wanted to kind of, you know, because I actually read a lot about how women have trouble having sex for the first time or being intimate for the first time. And a lot of it is also conditioning from society, like the perception that women are not supposed to say what they want, pretend that you don't want to have sex. Sex is reserved for men. It's something a wife gives the husband at the end of the day. All of that nonsense. But also, I've realized that it's not always cultural, societal conditioning. It's also like inherent, deep, actual trauma that a
Mm.
woman was born with. And women carry a lot more trauma in their vaginas than men carry in their bodies. And I'm always thinking why, because if everybody's born with that mother wound,
Yeah.
then it should just apply to both people, you know?
You know, the act of receiving and giving pleasure itself is an art, right? You have to agree. It's an art. And we have ancient textbooks on it. Kama Sutra is there, you know, like we have these amazing, we have a huge history of just human beings figuring each other's bodies out to give and receive pleasure. And I think that is not a very small thing. It is it shifts a human evolution three times, I believe. That when human beings were comfortable with receiving and giving pleasure, they were much more aware, they were much more wise, they were much more awakened, and they were connected to nature. In fact, they were connected as a society. And with time, when it became a sin to receive and give pleasure, when you make something a sin, then you are refraining a human mind from tapping into that particular psyche. And when you stop a monkey acting in a certain way, when I tell you don't think of a blue elephant, you will think of a blue elephant. And you will think of it in the most wildest, unregulated ways, right? And that's how it happens, that when you tell a person to not normalize pleasure, to not seek pleasure, to not again explore pleasure, they will develop the most unhealthiest relationship with it, and with their own bodies, with the act of sex, and in fact all forms of it, all forms of it. So I think it all again comes down to human beings really going back to that ancient wisdom of how it was so necessary for our own well-being, by the way, for our own nervous system, our bodies. That there's a reason why we have a clitoris. Hello, there's a reason why God made us as these pleasure-oriented human beings who can explore each other's bodies, who can be creative while exploring it, and in fact not make it a painful, traumatizing, process, or a traumatizing act. So it can be the most healing, or in fact transformative, or traumatizing act. And I think that's a journey that we take, the present generation, that from being the most traumatized of it, once we start to replace the experience with more safer experiences, some so you heal. That
I
somebody
always say
touched.
this, it takes a good sex to heal from bad sex. It's a very simplistic way of putting it, and I don't want the feminist brigade attacking me like rape is not bad sex, it's rape. I get it. But like it's in a nutshell, it's basically what it is.
Yeah.
But it's just we see this manifest more with women's bodies than we
Mm,
see with men's body, like with a man's body. And
yeah.
I'm always thinking why?
Patriarchy once again. Woman's body is a public business. The way you want something to be a certain way, the shape of the breast to the shape of the butt to the skin to the hair, all of it is just like, men are raised in a manner. When they study a woman, when they literally involve themselves with a woman, they have a certain picture in their head that they really want to have sex with. And that is the biggest problem in the first place, because the moment then they start to explore a woman physically, they still have that picture that they have in their head. So it's a mental block as well. So the woman will never feel fully satisfied, because deep inside she's not being fully seen and accepted for who she is, her bodies, her scars, her breasts, every little detail. And that's why a woman starts to not only feel unsafe, that it's not about the rape is the only unsafe sex or traumatizing sex. A sex which is not fulfilling, which is not satisfying for a woman, also gives her a little bit of shut off feeling, that, oh, this man that I slept with commented that my vagina is not so pretty. Then I think I'll become very conscious about sleeping with men, because they might end up making me feel bad about my body, right? Or what
Yeah.
do I do that they don't see me in that particular thing? Okay. So I think that's how the way we just give away. I love how I kind of read it somewhere recently, that when a man needs to feel confident about himself, his body, it comes from within him. And no, it's actually the other way around. When a man needs to feel confident about himself, he will gather like women around him who make him feel superior. Yeah, you know because women love to accept men's bodies like anything. We are raised that way. We just accept, accept, accept. And for men, it's the other way. For women, it's just like, okay, we have to ignite that self-love, self-acceptance. We're so dependent, like, if only somebody like will make me feel better about myself, then I'll suddenly be like, okay, fine, I love myself too. Okay, fine, there is some sort of self-love in me. Okay, I love my body finally. Okay, it's like a whole textbook situation. But a man, it's easy for him. He'll find one woman who will just like boost his ego, and then he feels like he's the king of the world.
Yeah. Yeah, that is
And he's
so
intentionally, that's why they
true.
say they don't want strong women around because a strong woman doesn't boost his ego.
Yeah, they want people pleasing women around.
Yep.
And that is about to change. So,
Ew.
thank you so much. Is there something that you would like to add?
I'm really happy right now. The fact that we're able to pinpoint so many nuances of how women feel and how men feel around each other, and how we are growing while we face our demons. How I am facing my demons, how you're facing your demons, how you know that your community, your friend circle has evolved with time. In the last few weeks itself, when we talked the last time, in fact, when we got in touch, since that day, so many things have shifted in my life. So even yesterday, I think on a Saturday evening, I went out after so long and I had like two, three drinks. And usually I would get really anxious that, oh, no, 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 like, I hope I'm okay the next day and this and that. Because at one point of time, I was gaslighted into believing that I get too emotional when I drink. Yesterday, I was so regulated and I was just so much at ease with myself, the way I spoke, because I was not too conscious. And I felt loved, deeply loved by my own self, because I have decentered men in my life, by the way. Duh. And I had a beautiful evening. I woke up with a very clear head, and I think that's where I'm noticing women around me as well, slowly kind of comfortable in understanding the difference between somebody gaslighting them and them finally knowing their truth. And
Yeah.
I think that's why we need each other to, in times when we can't remind it ourselves, we should have women around who can remind it for us. Yeah.
Yeah,
Thank you so
thank you
much,
for your
by the way,
time. It
for
was wonderful. It was super interesting to talk.